Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Thank you for listening, whether it's on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, Progressive Voices via TuneIn, or wherever you podcast. Thank you for doing so. Jay Bookman joins me from the Georgia Recorder. Journalist, editor, columnist. He writes that Stacey Abrams' political aspirations may be coming to a close, like the window of opportunity for one Stacey Abrams may be drawing nigh. I found the timing of this column to be pretty prescient in that you're starting to see the Democratic field for the gubernatorial race here in the state of Georgia in 2026 at least starting to congeal a little bit, if not forming solidly. Jay, we haven't heard that Stacey Abrams is going to run for governor. And I'm of the opinion that I kind of wish she wouldn't, but I think your column actually does a better job of stating that than I could. So thanks for joining me this morning, first of all. And second of all, what was it that gave you the sense you needed to write this column in the first place?
The impetus for it was the admission of guilt by two of her nonprofit organizations that they had misused some $3 million in direct support of her gubernatorial campaign, which is against state law. They had fought those allegations since 2018, basically, denied them vociferously, refused to cooperate in the investigations, and but were backed into a corner. And once backed into a corner, they had to admit that's exactly what they had done, and were fined a record $300,000 for those transgressions. And I think that there was already, I think, a dubious atmosphere around a third consecutive gubernatorial race by Stacey. I think that, for me anyway, that kind of it's hard to run a campaign on good government, which has been the basic thrust of her candidacy. It's hard to make that race when you have that on your recent record.
Yeah, I can see the campaign ads now with the splashing of newspaper headlines, ethics violations, record fines. You can just see that and know right away that that's going to derail her in a general for sure, if not in the primary. I don't know that sort of infighting would happen in a primary race, but you never know.
It became a hard-fought battle. It would be.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. She reminds me of me in my sophomore year of high school in a little bit, in that I ran for class president and won one term. So I guess I have a little bit of a jump on her on that. No, I ran for class office and won, and had ideas that I wanted to implement to help those in my grade with like tutoring after school, yada, yada, yada. Whereas I was running against the popular kids. They didn't have any platform or anything like that. They were just the popular kids. And I didn't have a whole lot of support in that sort of scholastic governance to get anything like that done. I had the ideas, but it wasn't necessarily something that I could put. I think what I'm saying is Stacey Abrams, to me, in my mind, would have been a fantastic governor. She's very cerebral. She had great ideas. Now, whether or not she would have been able to have gotten into the office and gotten anything done with, obviously, a General Assembly that was going to be right-leaning, another matter altogether. But I think we're starting to see that the idea of her running organizations is problematic as well, and that could come to question when the voters are asked to support somebody, either for the nomination on the Democratic side or for the office, again, were she to win the nomination in 2026.
Yes, I think I make the reference, excuse me, in the column that there's a pattern of over-promising and under-delivering in her political history. And I think that this, fits into that pattern, unfortunately.
But didn't she really win? She got a walk-on role on a Star Trek episode.
She won in a lot of ways. She's now a national figure.
Yeah.
I'm sure she gets big speaking fees when she goes around the country talking to Democratic groups or whatever. She's a player, so her political career if you think of that in a larger term, is far from over. But I think her career as a candidate. Now, if something changes, another problem she has is Georgia has 2 Democratic senators, so neither one who seem like they're ready to step aside. So
Right.
those vacancies aren't going to be there.
Right.
The governor's race is about the only.
Logical.
I can't see you running for lieutenant governor or
Right.
secretary of state. Although that might be a wise move, but I just don't see it. So governor's the only race in town, and as I point out in the column, she came close in 2018. Did not come close in 2022. In fact, 3 other Democrats on the statewide ballot got more votes than she did in
That's
2022.
right. Yeah.
So that's not a good sign. The trend lines are down.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Well, let's go back in time now to 2018. She ran a race against the then Secretary of State who was running for governor, who oversaw the election that he was participating in against her. So the deck was already stacked against her in some respects. And so I don't know if this ethics complaint. I'm not a Georgia State legal whiz or anything like that. These ethics complaints sound to me a little bit like she was letting Fair Fight Action act as a super PAC on her behalf. And that flies afoul of state law. Is that a correct interpretation?
In general, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, and so at the state level, state of Georgia doesn't allow that sort of thing. And apparently, her organization being unaware of that, or trying to act pious and saying, well, we can sort of attack the generalities of the Republican Party or their nominee without necessarily endorsing or supporting their opponent, and that's fair. Is that a correct interpretation of what they thought they were trying to do?
Well, no, because the evidence demonstrates that they were directly endorsing her, using those funds to directly endorse her candidacy.
Gotcha.
They did.
You spoke a little bit about the 2018 race and the fact that she chose not to concede necessarily, and made sure to delineate that doesn't really compare to what Donald Trump tried to do in 2020. Her choosing not to concede, I've said this a few times, if we spend as much time investigating that race as we have collectively at the state and federal level, the 2020 outcome, she might have actually had a valid point not to concede. But we obviously didn't do that, and we didn't have, ad nauseum state election board hearings to pour over data and, recounts, this, that, and the other. So I think that's a fair point to point out. But I actually saw you earlier this week tweeting about the 2020 race, and I thought you made a pretty valid question. You want to bring that one up?
Sure. Republicans have had control of Congress for quite a while now.
Right.
Donald Trump now has the White House. He's doing all kinds of stuff in Washington, as we know. The one thing they're not doing, they didn't do it when they had control of the House. They don't do it. They're not doing it now. Trump is not calling for an FBI investigation of the 2020 race, which is he's called the greatest crime in American history. It's basically the entire rationale for his 2024 race. The idea that election was stolen from him is the reason for his existence as president today. He has shown no curiosity about who did that, who stole the election from him, how did they do it, who should be charged with crimes. He now has control of DOJ. He's shown he's not shy at all about ordering the FBI to investigate people, incidents, anybody who offends him. He's calling for the prosecution, but he has no interest in proving his basic claim that the 2020 election was stolen from him.
It is curious, and I can't help but wonder if some of that has to do with the fact that he would be targeting states like Arizona and Georgia, Republican states where Republicans were in charge at the state level, and doesn't want to create some sort of a sweep or infighting within the party now that he has that control again.
I think you're giving him way too much credit. Do you remember his phone call with Raffensperger?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I do.
He wasn't shy about that.
Right.
He was the Speaker of the House in Arizona, Rusty, I forget his last name now, who stood up to him. I mean, he wasn't shy about. I mean, he's not shy about anything.
Mm-hmm.
My point in that is that they know the election was not stolen from him.
Well, and then he's been quoted within his close circles as saying as much.
Occasionally, he's been quoted, secondhand quotes, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
Yeah, but I don't think even he believes that anymore. Well, but he does. The whole Republican Party in the House, they were investigating Hunter Biden's dick pics, but they weren't investigating the stolen election.
Yeah.
They had subpoena power. They had investigative committees investigating everything and nothing. But they had no curiosity whatsoever about trying to prove that the 2020 election had been stolen. And the reason is because they know it was not stolen.
Right.
They know that if they started an investigation of it and fail to come up with anything, which is what they would do, the whole thing would collapse. So it's better not to even look at it at all. But it tells us is that deep down they all know that the election was not stolen, and that the idea of a stolen election is merely the excuse they use to justify all this authoritarian, insurrectionist, et cetera, is to fuel the drives their movement these days. And they all know it's false.
So, and I almost feel like Trump is doing this backwards anyway. Like he released a ton of the J6 rioters, a lot of them who attacked police officers at the Capitol that day, without even looking into the specifics. There was a clip of an NBC reporter, the White House correspondent, asking him a specific example, and he said, "Well, we'll have to look into that." Like, why didn't you look into that before the pardons? I almost feel like if you're going to release the J6ers, you would do that after doing an investigation into the 2020 election, which, as you definitely point out, he ain't doing.
Yeah, his point in releasing the J6 protesters is he doesn't care whether they were violent or not.
Yeah,
he owes it to his people. He thought what they did was right. So, and he, all along he's called them hostages, et cetera, et cetera. He's denied that there was violence. They were provoked by the cops. Or the cops let him in.
Yeah.
It was Antifa. You could run through the list of excuses. I didn't see him pardoning any Antifa.
That's right. Yeah, that's funny. There were none to be released at that point in time. We're with Jay Bookman, opinion writer, columnist, and editor with the Georgia Recorder. Let's pick up on that conversation where we left off here. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to grab another coffee real quick, and then we'll continue this conversation. I want to dive back into the gubernatorial race and what might be shaping up here in the state of Georgia when the Ron Show returns. You can follow the Ron Show on your preferred social media platforms at Ron Show ATL, now on Blue Sky. Facebook, Twitter X, Instagram, Threads. We're with Jay Bookman from the Georgia Recorder. Jay, man, I got to credit you. You stay on Twitter X and you stay engaged on Twitter X, and I try to as well. I made the decision that I wasn't going to vacate any of this stuff, and I know a lot of folks are trying to leave the Meta products, Facebook and Instagram as well, with the Zuckerberg pivot. You decided to just keep on plugging on, and what's the rationale behind that for you?
I struggle with that question almost every day. I struggle with it when I see Elon giving the Nazi salute.
Oh, my God.
I enjoy Blue Sky. You don't get the engagement, and by engagement, I don't mean the numbers. I mean there's nobody there to debate.
Yeah, that's true. It is a little empty. It is a little void of especially the pushback. So you like the pushback?
I do. I think it's important. I think there aren't a lot of open minds out there, but occasionally, if you keep trying to make sense, and here are the facts, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
I mean, that is our only hope.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree 1,000%. And I obviously Blue Sky is trailing the others because they don't have the numbers, and in a lot of respects, it is a bit of an echo chamber on the left. For now anyway. Not that those who are independent or right leaning aren't invited there or welcome there. It's just not where they're going right now because they feel like they've got free reign on Facebook or the Twitter X platform.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I'm not even sure how welcome they would be.
Yeah.
I think Blue Sky is. A lot of people have gone to it because it's a haven.
Yeah.
They're not getting. You can post something there, and you're not going to get called. A
libtard.
Or a long list of words.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Many of them, most of them, we shouldn't say on this medium. The cruelty, the meanness, the trolling, it doesn't exist there.
Yeah, and you like it. You feed off of it.
I don't know if I like it, but you need that friction. If that friction isn't there, you're not getting something done.
Yeah,
that friction makes it useful.
I agree 1,000%. I'm kind of the same way. I stay there, and I don't mind the pushback. I'm not hesitant to point out when somebody comes back with just some vapid swipe that has nothing of substantiation to the conversation. I will not hesitate to point that out. But I'm the same way. I like that back and forth. I've some of my best liberal friends, honestly, on social media, I meet on conservative Facebook pages. So because they're there as well to find out what the other side is thinking and to have a little dialogue or pushback is not a bad thing. We all can learn from it, and I think the right could stand to learn from deviating from their media choices as well to try and see what the other side's thinking instead of just going with the blanket Sean Hannity liberal policies are a failure mantra without trying to figure out, well, what are they? That's when you ask people like, well, what is DEI? Tell me what DEI is. You hate it so much. What is DEI? And they can't define it. They don't know what woke is either. They can't define it. But that's because they don't deviate from their from the pages they follow or the accounts they follow on Twitter X, or go away from Newsmax or OANN or Fox News to get any sense of an idea of what the other side is thinking.
Woke and DEI are just labels for the resentment and discontent.
Yeah,
that's all. They have no real meaning. They have no definition. They are just causes of their angst.
Do you think in any way, shape, form, or fashion, though, that like diversity, equity, inclusion efforts maybe went too far or too fast for our culture, for our society, that we needed to pace it better in some ways, or what make it more palpable? I'm trying to find a way to define that in my mind. If things just went a little too fast.
Well, clearly they went too fast for a large segment of the American public. Because, but if you look back, when did this start? It started when Barack Obama was elected president.
And what was different about him than any other U.S. president before him? I'm trying to put my finger on it, and I can't quite.
There was something.
Which reminds me, by the way, there's a lot of talk about, in fact, I know a congressman is trying to introduce a constitutional amendment to allow Donald Trump to have a third term, which, I mean, God, to take your gay crush offline, buddy. And this is coming from a gay guy. But that would also open the idea for a Barack Obama reemergence, and I'm not sure that they're aware that opening that Pandora's box could lead to more discontent on their side.
Well, I was kind of heartened by sponsoring that legislation that Andy Ogles, I think it was, from Tennessee. It's an admission that at least you do need a constitutional amendment for him to run a third time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. You're right. You're right. Glass half full.
Take your small victories where you get them. But that was like, okay, well, you realize you're admitting he can't run again unless you get a constitutional amendment. That's progress of a limited sort. But the effort's going nowhere. There's no possible way that they're going to pass a constitutional amendment between now and 2028. So it's just a gesture of loyalty.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. Wishful thinking. And we've got plenty of time to talk about the 2028 field and how that'll come together in the near future. The DNC is still wrestling with who's going to run the Democratic Party in the offing, and that's a horse race that I actually hope that Americans will start paying more attention to in the very near future. But again, that's still very early in the offing for the time being. We are going to talk a little bit more about the 2026 race for the governor's office here in the state of Georgia. And I saw a piece in the AJC here just yesterday that former Atlanta mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is kicking around the idea of running for that office herself. Jay Bookman is joining me. We're having a conversation about his most recent column in the Georgia Recorder, which sort of implies that the window is closing for Stacey Abrams, and her Fair Fight Action ethics violations seem to have aided in that window shutting. We'll pick up that conversation when we return on The Ron Show, American One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
I know it's never too soon to start talking about the 2026 elections, and we have a senator who will be on the ballot in 2026, a fellow by the name of Jon Ossoff. And Jay Bookman joins me from the Georgia Recorder. And I know we didn't start the conversation talking about Jon Ossoff, but Jon Ossoff very much is aware that he is up for a potential reelection should he decide to run again, and I imagine he would, in 2026. But he's one who, because he's thrown his support behind the Lake and Riley Act at the federal level, he has some Democrats sort of rankled about that.
Yes, he did, but I think Warnock joined him in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't. There's no real danger to him on the Democratic side, and then he may have blunted an attack from the right when the time comes in 2026. I don't like the law. I think it's badly written and is going to cause a lot more problems than it solves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a particular problem with the theoretical goal of the legislation, which is, if you've got undocumented immigrants who commit a crime, sorry, buddy, you're gone. I don't have a problem with that.
There are questions of due process that need to be answered. You're right, and the law sort of doesn't really, kind of ham handles that. But in some respects, sometimes you just have to read the room and understand that there has to be some sort of middle ground. Unfortunately, Democrats are always the one looking for middle ground. Republicans never seem to find their way in that direction. They just move further to the right on issues like this. And, Trump coming in immediately and instituting some draconian, immigration issues, again, just speak to a larger point about which side of the party wants to actually work on solving causation of our immigration woes versus a party that wants to politicize those woes. And
right, they want it as an issue. I mean, we saw that when Trump killed the compromise legislation during the campaign. He didn't want the problem to go away.
Yeah. Yeah. The real disheartening thing for me is, and I had Kate Lincoln Goldfinch on from the law firm Lincoln Goldfinch in Austin, Texas, is that immediately Trump shut down one of the things that I don't think Biden got enough credit for, which was, creating an app that gave people the opportunity to, keep tabs on their process no matter where they are, which means even if you are going to come back into office and reinstitute Remain in Mexico, why shut down the app as well? It set people back months or years in their process because they just wiped.
You just answered your question.
Yeah, I know. But again, that just speaks to to a party that wants to work on a problem versus a party that wants to exacerbate the problem and then politicize it. You're absolutely
right. They are anti-immigrant. Period. By whatever process, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, and I think that's exemplified by the fact that those 1,600 Afghans, are allies, people who put their necks in the line for us, and were going through the process and had been vetted. But you've gone through the entire process. It's been years now since Afghanistan fell, and Trump just ended it.
Yeah.
Just
But you know that also goes back to pointing out to me, like, the GOP professes to be the party of our military, our armed services, those who are out there to fighting for us, and to me that kind of sweeps into DNI as well. But they don't see it that way. They think intelligence, they think CIA, FBI, they think that those are all enemies, part of the deep state, et cetera, and so on. But they literally, like, that action right there left a lot of our intelligence officers twisting in the wind. That there can be no trust internationally for the United States when it comes to working with covert ops.
No. Or and if any kind of when we're threatening little Denmark,
With
one of our
invading Greenland,
longtime allies,
right.
And you're threatening Canada. We once had a long list of friends, and that long list is getting shorter and shorter.
And that's an argument that I think Democrats need to start making, that we're making ourselves less safe by alienating our allies and by leaving people literally on the tarmac now in Afghanistan. Like, start running some campaign ads. I know you don't have a candidate, but start running some campaign ads. It's not too early for me, in my mind, to be running attack ads against ideas that your opposition is putting little pen to paper. And by the way, I'm old enough, and maybe you are as well, Jay, to remember when Republicans really hated executive orders. Remember when the guy in the tan suit started, issuing executive orders, and they called it fiat? Fox News was foaming at the mouth about executive orders, and the Five, Greg Gutfeld in the game the other day, just praising Donald Trump for all of his executive actions.
Well, there is no principle. The only principle is whatever Donald Trump tells them that day.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. Tariffs that the Republican Party would, that you grew up with, that I grew up with, would be terrified of tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's on board. A lot of the Republicans were, of course, we're going to pardon the January 6th, but not the violent ones. Nobody's going to do that.
And they did.
Well, he pardons the violent ones, and there's applause for that. There is no principle other than what Trump wants.
Let's get
and
back.
What Trump wants varies from day to day.
Yeah.
TikTok, there's another one.
Oh my God. Yeah. He gets to be the hero of TikTok, and it's all simple with him too. It's just a matter of, the TikTok generation helped me win. So, and obviously, public opinion polling on that changed from like 32%. Supported TikTok at some point in time, and now it's more than 50%. And so he is not unlike, in a Clintonian sense, like Bill. Like, he just waited on, popularity numbers to tell him what to do.
And top Trump donors want to get their hands on that.
Yeah, there's that too. And he's made no secret that he's for something along those lines. And I know Steve Mnuchin made a play for it initially, but this is something this is a complex issue that I don't think the American people have a full grasp on. In that TikTok doesn't need America as much as America thinks it needs TikTok, and that American exceptionalism mindset that they need us. No, they don't. They're a global entity, and if TikTok footprint in America went away, TikTok would be fine. A little dent in their numbers, but it wouldn't be suffering so cataclysmically that it would crash globally.
I'm not certain that's true, because I think, numbers wise, you're probably correct, but I wonder whether the creative content that comes out of this country,
for sure. Now there's that.
It drives a lot of its popularity internationally. If you don't get those content creators here in the States contributing that, because we're still we're the source of celebrity internationally.
There's that, and there's also, it's kind of embarrassing. Are we just like the funniest people on the planet, good or bad? to be a little self-deprecating, they're laughing at us, not with us sometimes, and. No, you may be right. I want to pivot back to your column in the Georgia Recorder today. You spoke at good length about Stacey Abrams and her potential options for 2026, were she to run for governor again. But I also wanted to ask you, I don't know if you saw here recently, that there's a little bit of movement, some discussion, at least internally within the mind of one Keisha Lance Bottom, former mayor of Atlanta, for running for state office as well. And I know you haven't given much thought to it, but like just initially when I say to you, so Keisha Lance Bottom's is thinking about running for governor, what are your first thoughts?
She served one term as governor
Mayor.
and left or as mayor, excuse me, of course. She served one term as Atlanta mayor and left for the apparent reason she couldn't stand the heat.
Yeah.
I mean, she gave no real explanation other than that. So I think any run for higher office, especially governor, that's going to be a big question mark. Why did you abandon your previous office after 4 years instead of running for a second term there? If she were to run statewide for Secretary of State, even Lieutenant Governor, some lower profile race where she could, if she won, she could establish herself as a statewide figure.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's a Black female city of Atlanta politician
There's that.
running statewide.
That's problematic. It is. I mean, it's no point in mincing words. It is problematic. But also, she, I believe, needs to work on rehabilitating her image a little bit. Because fair or unfair, anybody who's running against her in a statewide race is going to point to crime data in the city of Atlanta, irrespective of, the COVID situation or the George Floyd protests. We also had an officer involved, killing here in Atlanta. We had Atlanta police officers yanking people out of cars. I mean, that I can just see the viral videos of that. Then on the far left, you're going to have folks who are going to point to, her being mayor prior to Cop City coming into existence and, laying the groundwork for that. The infrastructure problems that the city dealt with after her tenure in the mayor's office. We dealt with a lot of water issues that they could, track back to her being mayor and not dealing with it. There's just so many reasons why you could make the case that she's probably not the person you want to rally your party behind for a gubernatorial run.
I don't think she's a realistic candidate for that office.
Yeah.
I think she's throwing out trial balloons. She wants to get back into the game. But no, I don't think the governor's race is not. If she wants to get back in the game, that's she's picking too high from the tree on that one.
We're also hearing Lucy McBath, Representative Lucy McBath is making some consideration for that. Again, that takes us back to the Black female running for statewide office issue. And I don't think that that's necessarily a death knell. I don't want folks to misunderstand that I think that that's a problem. I think the problem we've had in the past, at least in the last two cycles, is that when we've had a Black female running for that office, we had a candidate who never went to, say, Rabun County or, left the safe, cozy confines of blue cities and blue counties to try and, pull some votes from areas that may not have a ton of blue voters.
That's the problem. I mean, but I think for Keisha, the problem would be this mayor of Atlanta.
Yeah.
That is always a problem in Georgia politics. So then that's the third strike, so to speak, Black female and one-term mayor of Atlanta who left for reasons nobody understands. Yeah. Again, she has to rebuild. If she wants a career in elective politics, she has to rebuild faith and confidence in her abilities. And you don't do that by running for governor. You do that by running for a lesser office, proving yourself, and then taking the escalator up to the higher office.
Do you think that with the passing of Jimmy Carter in recent months and folks either remembering or relearning in a lot of cases, especially for younger voters, learning more about Jimmy Carter's legacy, both as governor of the state of Georgia and president and after his presidency, do you think that his grandson may benefit a little bit from that, and maybe that he would consider another stab at the governor's office?
I think that's very plausible. Yes, I think what you describe is true. There's a lot of affection for Jimmy Carter. Jason Carter made a credible run for governor. It was clearly the party numbers weren't there yet.
Yeah.
And it depends on who the Republicans put up. But I think the Democrats with the right candidate can certainly be competitive in 2026. In part because I think you're going to get. I mean, let's be honest. These next 2 years under Trump are going to be highly controversial.
Mm-hmm.
If the Republican nominee, whoever it is going to be somebody who has to pledge loyalty to Donald Trump. If it's Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who, as you recall, was indicted for being a false Trump elector,
Right,
and had a role much more involved in that in the whole mess. So 2026, even though it's a state governor's race, to some degree is going to be a referendum on Donald Trump. So, and as we've seen, he's not a really popular figure in Georgia. He lost it 4 years ago. He barely won it this time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Democrats have a realistic chance, depending on the candidate. And Jason Carter would be a viable candidate. I mean, Lucy McBath may be as well.
Yeah, she has served 40% of the state's population from being moved around so many times, having her district reshaped so many times. She's at some point in time she served about 40% of the state's population already. So that kind of gives her a little bit of a leg up right then and there.
Yes, she's done a good job. She's no scandals have attached to her. What brought her into politics is the firearms issue and the school shootings issue. I think that is the kind of issue the NRA is going to raise holy hell, but they're going to raise holy hell no matter who the Democrats put up.
Yeah.
I think, that's a plausible candidacy. I think she's not endorsing it, but I think, she we'll see. I'd be interested to see it. What a statewide
could be an interesting primary season if nothing else.
Yeah.
I think she's got to work on flexing her muscles on other issues, though, in order to grow that base. I mean, I think
she also supported the Lake and Raleigh bill, didn't she?
Yeah, there's that too.
Which is a sign she's thinking about her future.
Her bipartisan bona fide. You're absolutely right. Jay Bookman, Georgia Recorder, with a fantastic piece on Stacey Abrams and the drawing window for her political opportunities. We'll have that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Jay, thanks for joining me this morning. Appreciate the conversation as always.
Same here. Thank you.
Final few minutes of today's Ron Show and for the week. Gosh, this flew by. You know what? It's not often that I agree with Vivek Ramaswamy. Okay, calm down. Well, he's been kicked out of Doge. He's no longer part of the Trump team. And it has everything to do with the fact that he made this tweet a while back speaking to American culture and mediocrity. Something that diversity, equity, inclusion seems to fend off, but mediocrity is on the rise in a second Trump presidency. By the way, I don't know if white conservative women are aware that diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts actually included white women in hiring, but whatever. Vivek tweeted this a while back. The reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over Native Americans, not Native Americans, but us who are, isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit, as he puts in parentheses, a lazy and wrong explanation. A key point of it comes down to the C word, culture. Tough questions demand tough answers, and if we're really serious about fixing the problem, we have to confront the truth. Our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 90s and likely longer. He's not wrong. He obviously watched a lot of 90s television as a young person here because he really leaned on the 90s culture quite a bit. In his follow-up tweet, that doesn't start in college, it starts young. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ, or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World or Zack and Slater over Screech in Saved by the Bell or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. Boy, he watched a lot of these TV shows, right? Fact, he says, I know multiple sets of immigrant parents in the 90s who actively limited how much their kids could watch those TV shows precisely because they promoted mediocrity. And their kids went on to become wildly successful STEM graduates. A little bit of stereotyping here, but okay. More movies like Whiplash, never saw it. Fewer reruns of Friends, don't like it. More math tutoring, fewer sleepovers, more weekend science competitions, fewer Saturday morning cartoons, more books, less TV. He's not wrong. More creating, less chilling, more extracurriculars, less hanging out at the mall. Most normal American parents look skeptically at those kinds of parents. More normal American kids view those kinds of kids with scorn. I call them nerds, geeks, etc. and so on. Trust me, I know. I used to be one. If you grow up aspiring to normalcy is what you will achieve. Now close your eyes and visualize which families you knew in the 90s or even now who raised their kids according to one model versus the other, Vivek tweeted. Be brutally honest. Normalcy doesn't cut it in a hyper-competitive global market for technical talent. And if we pretend like it does, we'll have our asses handed to us by China, Vivek tweeted. This can be our Sputnik moment. We've awakened from the slumber before and we can do it again. Trump's election hopefully marks the beginning of a new golden era in America, Vivek tweeted, but only if our culture fully wakes up, a culture that once again prioritizes achievement over normalcy, excellence over mediocrity, nerdiness over conformity, hard work over laziness. That's the work we have cut out for us, rather than wallowing in victimhood and just wishing or legislating, he tweets, alternative hiring practices into existence. I'm confident we can do it. Now, I've got a little bit to say about the whole legislating alternative hiring practices, but he's not wrong about celebrating mediocrity. The problem is he wanted to tether himself to an administration that is mired in mediocrity. The president himself passed up, obviously, without social cues whatsoever. You can't find grades anywhere documented that speak to his intelligence. You can see the lack of intelligence, the lack of refinement every time he tweets or speaks. You're going to tell me that that's meritocracy? Linda McMahon wants to be the Secretary of Education. The Linda McMahon who ran WWE, who did skits on television, nominated by a man who acted out skits on television. The American public loves mediocrity and fakeness. It's just funny because what Vivek is sort of espousing is actual colorblind meritocracy, and obviously that ain't gonna fly in MAGA land or in the second Trump presidency. So he's now on the outside looking in. Lawrence O'Donnell, by the way, correctly points out the mediocrity in RFK Jr. being head of Health and Human Services.
And that is who Donald Trump wants to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. A science ignoramus who was in a heroin stupor every day. That uneducated buffoon did not take a single pre-med science course in college. He could never get through organic chemistry or inorganic chemistry. And in the class I was in with him in college, he could not keep his eyes open. I did not know then that he was a heroin addict every day he was in college. He has said he was a heroin addict for 14 years. Yep. And while he was a heroin addict, his powerful uncle, Senator Ted Kennedy, managed to get him a job in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And while he was working for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, he was committing drug crimes every day, for which he was finally arrested, charged, and convicted. And that is who Donald Trump wants to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. A science ignoramus who was in a heroin stupor every day that he could have been studying science.
Did Vivek ever weigh in on RFK for a cabinet position? I doubt he did. That's it for the Ron Show today and this week. Back Monday, 9 a.m., 5 p.m. on America One Radio, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Have a great weekend.